At the outset, let me compliment Mr. Tomar and Mohit for putting together such a wonderful conference. It's such a learning to each one of us, I'm sure. And I'm thoroughly enjoying every minute of my participation in this, and thank you for that. Now, what I'll be alluding to is about implementation and execution. See, there is so much of knowledge and wisdom, ancient knowledge and wisdom, for several generations, like river Ganga flowing for millions of years possibly. The knowledge has been flowing, in eastern part of the world for thousands and thousands of years, and it is getting refined, modified, improvised, new streams of knowledge, new approaches. Limitlessly it's flowing. It's for you to decide what you want to pick up and how much you want to learn and how you want to incorporate that in your daily life, to what extent, in what context. That is for us to decide. So referring to some of those scriptures and all that, I think is superfluous. There is an erudite team of people sitting here, scholarly people. Guruji is sitting here, and you will appreciate that this sharing of knowledge and wisdom, ancient wisdom of India in Vedas and Upanishads and Puranas, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and a number of great poets and writers thereafter, who talked about human resource management, who talked about leadership, who talked about running organizations, administration. Chanakya speaks about administrative context, regulatory, ethical values, what is misconduct, what is crime, what punishment for what misconduct. There's a whole lot of, body of knowledge. Now, I'll just pick on two issues where I'll be talking about that. And that refers to how to bring that into real life today. That wisdom getting translated into action today. What is it that we need to do? Something really profound. How can we bring it and start practicing it today? See, unfortunately, what has happened in the last 100, 150 years or so, like, my earlier respected speakers also alluded to it, and somebody quoted even Macaulay, I think Mr. Nageshwar Ji, and how the system that we had in transferring knowledge, processing knowledge into wisdom, and adopting it in our own lives, and walking the talk, some of these processes have been damaged in the last 100 years, I would say, 150 years. Now, if you look at countries like Japan, I'm very fascinated with Japan because I've spent almost a month and a half in Japan visiting a number of companies and trying to understand how they're able to be rooted in their culture, and the management practices also arise from that, emerge from that cultural context, and they have become world class. There are at least 100 Japanese brands which are positioned in world markets and very popular and very well-known brands. Now, how did they do that is a thing that has always baffled me. So I went to Toyota, I went to Sony, I went to some of these companies, spent a week, spent 10 days like this, and I met the production engineering head of Toyota those days. I was with Masaki Imai for 4 days, Sensei Masaki Imai, the founder, father of Kaizen. See, the terminologies they use in Japanese management also refers to their ancient traditions. It could be Taoistic traditions, it could be Buddhist traditions, it could be whatever. And they all stand in a line in the morning and do Tai Chi exercises. And they pray, and then only they start the work. I saw that in a couple of factories. Now, the difference that I saw is they're able to translate that into a process, a manual, and an instruction guide. I read, as I was exploring this, I bumped into this author called Dr. Funabashi. Dr. Funabashi was a professor in Tokyo University, And his writings truly amazed me. He conducted seminal research for about 20 years on the subject of longevity of organizations. And he picked some 30, 40 organizations which are more than 300, 400 year old. I'm sure most of you know that there are about 50 companies or more than 500 year old who are still becoming stronger and stronger. There are at least about 150, 200 companies who are more than 150, 200 year old, which are getting stronger and bigger and stronger. Now, what contributes to longevity was an interesting research that he conducted. And one interesting outcome, to cut the story short, was he said two things. One is they build strong relationships with all sections of people, put people at the center. It is not, they're not going to segregate people into customer, shareholder, like we do stakeholder management. People are people. Everybody has an aspiration. Everybody is making a commitment to your organization. And now, how do you integrate their ambitions, aspirations, and requirements into a company program? They quote Buddhist texts, they quote Taoist texts of putting people in the center in any collective human endeavor. We work for them, our activities because of them, from them and for them. So that was a great learning, and this has been alluded to in a number of our own scriptures. And one thing I am always reminded of is a question that Yudhishthir, Dharmaraja asks in Shanti Parva Mahabharata to Pitama Bhishma when he is in Sharashaya, how do I select most competent people? That is becoming a challenge for my army. When I'm selecting them, they seem to be good, but after that they don't demonstrate those values. He says, he smiles and says, Namantram aksharam nasti, nasti moolam anaushadam, ayogya purusho nasti, yojakaha tatra dullabha. There is no letter or a syllable in Sanskrit which, if properly utilized, has no effect of a mantra. There is no herb that grows in this world which, if it is properly identified and utilized, has no effect of a aushadam, medicine. Ayogya purusho nasti. You can't brand somebody as a permanent ayogya. That's very, 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 very rare. It doesn't happen like that. Yojakaha tatra durlabha. The person with a discretion to put the right herb for the right disease, to meditate on the right mantra for the right output, to select the right person for the right job, that person with discretion, deeper discretion, is the rarity. Cultivate that quality in you, is what he says. Now, I am reminded, when we talk about models, I am reminded of a model in the royal family of Ujjain. I think Mr. Tomarji will be more interested too, because he is from Ujjain. The king calls one of his ministers, and also he is a poet called Rajashekara. And he asks Rajashekara, see, like my children are growing up and they need to learn these things, and it should be rigorous. What kind of model, how do you want to teach them, train them, make them learn? Can you suggest something? And I will hand them over to you. He says, I'll come back to you after a few days. Then he comes back and he says, look here, if you give me complete freedom, not interfere for the next 10 years, I'll satisfy all your requirements and train them in such a way that you will be delighted. He says, that's exactly what I want. You please go ahead. Then after he does that successfully, he constructs the model. In his book, he alludes to the Kavya Mimamsa by Rajashekara. He talks about a model. Learning should start with Aupadeshika. That is, teacher to taught, transfer of knowledge, processing that. And wherever there is a knowledge gap, you transfer data, information that becomes knowledge. Knowledge processed becomes wisdom. And through that you get insights. Aupadeshika is the first stage, and that calls for very hard work. And they have to work for 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. They can't go and complain that this man is making us really slog. 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day. I really take the sweat out of them, and no interference. They should work. Once they master that, this is skills training, master that and move to the level of what's called aharya. In aharya level, he says, they can ask me questions. In the first level, I told them no questions. Don't ask me questions. Whatever I ask you, you should do. In the second level, they say you can ask me questions at an appointed time, not whenever you want. I will give you 1/2 day for asking questions, and I'll answer all your questions. And continue this hard work, and plus they have to visit certain establishments and certain places and learn and come and reflect and learn. The third and the last stage is, he calls it sahaja. Sahaja means they have picked up, they have learned, they have gone through the rough end of the stick, and they have become masters. They really learned it very well. And now they can ask any questions, and the only requirement for certifying them at the level of sahaja is they should be able to train another 10 people at the level of aharya. If you can train them into aharya, you will be called a master, a grand master, sahaja. So interestingly, we adopted this model in Taj hotels way back 30 years ago for skill training the frontline people. And I should say, not to elongate this, it worked wonders. Taj in 2009, 2010, 2011, in these 3-4 years was acclaimed as among the top 10 best service providing companies in the world in a database of 2,400 companies, which was surveyed by Gallup International in 54 countries. We had emerged as the top 4 or 5 best service providing companies in the world, and best employee satisfaction and best customer excellence. This is an experiment which we carried out. We drew inspiration from this model of Rajashekara in the court of Ujjain, and we worked on that. And now one last example. Going back to that Bhishma's talk, select people for values, ethical values, human values. A lot of HRD happens at home, in the school that he studies, in the college that he studies, in the company that he keeps. So Bhishma was alluding to all this. He was saying, look here, all this is HRD in a sense, We can understand it like that. Select the right people with right values and train them in skills. You will find top class, highly competent, well-performing, extremely well-performing team of people available for you. So we did similar experiments in our companies in Tata Motors and Taj, and it has given us excellent results. These two examples derived from ancient wisdom, models created, implemented and tested, and the results have been shown. What has happened in the context of Indian wisdom is this kind of test has to happen in a number of companies. It is not happening. They need to test the models, collect data. It's a bit of an R&D. That R&D is required, and outcomes have to be shown, and only then, because that is the language which the Western framework of logic and empirical justification acknowledges and accepts. So we can satisfy that. We can use these models, put it in place. And to conclude my talk, Mr. Nageshwar Rao was talking about right and left brain. And this theory or this This was propounded by one Dr. Roger Sperry, the theory of the right and left brain, right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain account for different faculties, whereas the left brain, is logic, mathematics, reasoning, justification, all that. And the right brain is all about design, music, innovation, different quality of imagination. So all that manifest colors and beauty, all that is right brain. So a harmonious blend of these two brains, as we call Ardhanarishwara. See, blend, an harmonious blend is a sound mind and a sound body and a good leader. Now, somebody asked Dr. Roger Sperry as he was traveling in one of his traveling jaunts in the airport that what accounts for your success, and you won the Nobel Prize, and can you say something about what happened? How did you, pursue this research, and what are some of the tactics and processes you used? And see, he said, look, you're asking this is a right brain output, you're asking a left brain question. And whatever I answer will be linear and it will not be correct. See, one thing I can tell you, human beings use only 3% or 4% of the potential of their brain in one lifetime. 97% of the capacity and the potential of the brain goes unutilized in one full lifetime of a human being. He mentioned that and he said, when somebody is carrying, in the final journey, somebody is going, I always feel pity, and I also tell myself that most of his potential is unutilized. So the best of, he is going with a lot of song in his heart, unsung. So the best of melodies that are ever sung in the history of mankind are those which are yet to be sung. Thank you.